Everyone, and welcome to tonight's webinar titled Coping and Adaptation, Strategies for Individuals and Families Living with MS. My name is Ann Lee, and I'm the Senior Specialist of Programs and Online Education for CanDo MS, and I'll be your moderator this evening. If you're not already familiar with who we are, CanDo MS is an innovative provider of lifestyle empowerment programs for people who live with MS and also for their support partners. Through our programs, we empower people to actively co-manage their disease and move beyond their MS by adopting healthy and active lifestyle behaviors. You can visit our website to learn about all of the programs that we do. You can register for our upcoming webinars on our website. You can also view our archived webinars. And you can learn about our in-person programs. We have our 4-day CanDo program, our 1-day Jumpstart programs, which are held about 5 times a year throughout the country, and our 2-day Take Charge program, which is a 2.5-day program that will be in Oakland in June and in Columbus, Ohio in August. So please go to our website at www.mscando.org. And I also wanted to share with you a video that we've just produced and launched. For the first time this year, earlier in May, video cameras were granted access to record at our CanDo program. And we've got some clips of support partners and interviews with participants to give you a first-hand look at what CanDo MS is all about. You can view this video by going to our website. You can navigate to the CanDo Life in the upper banner and scroll down to Val's CanDo Story. You'll also get a copy of these PowerPoint slides tomorrow, so you'll be able to access the link from these slides as well. You can also connect with us on social media. We have a Facebook page where you can find out about all of our up-to-date information regarding our programs and events. And we're also on Twitter and Pinterest and LinkedIn. And find us on YouTube as well, because you'll find all of our archived webinars also on YouTube for you to browse and peruse. So just a few housekeeping issues I'd like to go over. We will save the last 10 to 15 minutes of the webinar for your questions and answers. If you do have a question, please chat them to me. And the chat feature is located on the left-hand side of your computer screen. So just to submit your question, you can type it in that small box that says Chat with Presenters and click Send. I'll receive your questions, and we'll try to get as many answers as we can at the end of the program. This presentation is also being recorded, so all of your phone lines have been muted. The recording of this webinar will be archived on our website, so you'll be able to view a recording of this starting tomorrow. And before I get started, I'd like to introduce our presenters for this evening. You see Rosalind Kalb, PhD, on our screen here. She is the Vice President of Clinical Care at the National MS Society, where she develops and provides educational materials, clinical tools, and consultation services for healthcare professionals. As a clinical psychologist in private practice, Roz provided individual, group, and family therapy for people living with MS for more than 25 years. She is the author of the National MS Society's Knowledge is Power series for individuals newly diagnosed with MS, senior author of MS for Dummies, and co-author with her husband, Nicholas LaRocca, PhD, of Multiple Sclerosis, Understanding the Cognitive Challenges. Roz is also the editor of 2 books, MS, The Questions You Have, The Answers You Need, now in its 5th edition, and MS, A Guide for Families, as well as a proud contributor to the CanDo MS Guide to Lifestyle Empowerment, published by Demos Health. She's been very busy. Our second presenter for the evening is Mandy Rohrig, a physical therapist who graduated from Nebraska Wesleyan University with a BS in Exercise Science and a minor in Spanish. Following her undergraduate education, Mandy received her doctorate of physical therapy from the University of Nebraska Medical Center in Omaha, Nebraska. She is a member of American Physical Therapy Association's Neurological Section. Mandy currently works in an outpatient physical therapy setting where she specializes in the rehabilitation of individuals with neurological conditions, with a special emphasis in the treatment of individuals with MS as well as balanced vestibular disorders. She is certified in LSVT Global Big Treatment for individuals with Parkinson's disease. She is actively involved in the MS community in Omaha and regularly consulting and presenting among local MS exercise and support groups. So I'm very excited to welcome both Roz and Mandy, and I'd like to now turn the controls over to Mandy.
Great. Thank you, Anne. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We appreciate you joining us for this webinar this evening. I am Mandy Rohrig, and as Anne mentioned, I'm a physical therapist out of Omaha, Nebraska, and I'm excited and honored to have the privilege to speak with all of you and to have a conversation with Dr. Roz Kalb about this important topic.
And hello, everyone. I'm Roz Kalb. We want you to hear both of our voices because what you're going to be listening to now is basically a conversation that I'm lucky enough to be having with Mandy about this important topic.
And the majority of our messages throughout this webinar are going to be directed at individuals with multiple sclerosis. However, for those support partners on the call, we feel that a lot of these messages are also very applicable to you and your role and your part of the MS management team. So we'll go ahead and begin. Roz, what does resilience mean, and how does it play a role in the management of multiple sclerosis?
Well, I think the technical definition, Mandy, is that it's the capacity to come back from difficult times feeling better. So you come through a challenging or a difficult event in your life or a period in your life, and you feel like a better you. You feel stronger, more capable, and more confident in your abilities. And it's your ability to solve problems, to manage difficulties, and able to identify and make good use of available tools and strategies. So you learn from your experiences and feel stronger. And another way to say this is that your self-efficacy has increased. And self-efficacy means that confidence that you have in your ability to manage things on your plate that you have to manage.
Great, Roz. So is resilience something that can be developed or improved upon? And if so, how do you go about this?
Well, fortunately for all of us, resilience can be enhanced, right? We begin in childhood to create that foundation. Through experiences that we have as young children, we learn about problem solving, and we start to create these building blocks that are the foundation for the way we are going to cope and adapt with other things that come up in our lives. So as we go through life, we continue to add building blocks, and we grow through all kinds of experiences. We grow through positive experiences as well as ones that are more challenging. So school, relationships, job opportunities that we have, all of these provide opportunities for growth, for learning how to adapt to change, learning how to master skills that we need to master in life. And the same is true of experiences that aren't so easy or so positive. We also develop resilience from living through and coping with those.
Great. Roz, what factors do you think influence resilience most then?
Well, I think in my experience working with people over all these years, what I've seen is that a lot of resilience, or one's ability to develop resilience, depends on how a threat or a challenge is perceived. So if we think about MS specifically for a minute, there are some examples that come to mind right away of things about MS that offer growth opportunities, that pose challenges. So one is just getting the diagnosis of a chronic illness. This is a major challenging event in people's lives, and the ability to sort of deal with that, figure out what steps to take, figure out what that means in your life, that is an opportunity for growth, and it's an opportunity to deal with change and to develop mastery. The same is true when you go through an attack or a relapse where you have new symptoms or a setback. that may be temporary, or some of the changes may be more permanent. But each time there's an attack or a relapse, you have to deal with the challenges associated with that, which again is an opportunity to learn and to grow and to experience new feelings of mastery. So how one perceives those challenging events has a lot to do with how resilient one feels. So if everything is perceived as a threat or a failure, let's say a change in physical abilities, for example, if that is perceived as a failure, that's a tougher place to start from than if you perceive it as a challenge. We know from a lot of research that's been done in this area that when change or challenge is perceived as an opportunity for potential growth, people come through it feeling more resilient than if they perceive it as a threat or a failure. Similarly, when people think about MS as a war that they're either going to win or lose, that is very different from perceiving a chronic illness like this as a series of challenges that you have to meet one at a time along the way. So I was always more concerned when I was working with somebody who said, you know, I'm going to beat this, I'm going to be the one who's going to beat this disease, because we don't know how to cure MS yet. And so seeing it as a war to be won or lost has the potential to set somebody up for feelings of failure and disappointment, whereas if you see it as a series of challenges to master and learn from, that influences resilience. And the last thing is the kind of coping style that you bring to this experience can affect your feelings of resilience.
So often people use the word coping. What exactly does it mean to people with MS and even their support partners? How does that affect how they tolerate these and how they manage these threats and failures and challenges?
Well, I agree. Coping is a word that we use a lot, so that's a great question. I think the technical definition of coping is what you see here. It's how a person thinks and feels and responds in the face of a challenge. And we all have different coping styles that we develop, again, from childhood. Over lifetime, we tend to have patterns in the ways that we respond to challenges in our lives.
In your experience, are there effective ways to encourage or develop coping strategies?
Absolutely. I think, again, we know from a lot of research in this area that people who see challenges as opportunities for change or growth have a better ability to cope. They cope more successfully than those who see each challenge as an overwhelming hurdle. Similarly, when people take a proactive problem-solving approach to a challenge, rather than seeing it as this huge obstacle that can't be mastered, they are more successful at coping. So we can actually teach people problem-solving skills. If they haven't learned it along the way in their development, we can help people think that way, which will set them up for success as they try to cope with challenges that MS brings or that any other part of life might bring them. Another way that we can enhance coping is to encourage people to look at ways they have coped with challenges in the past, whether they were MS-related challenges or work-related or relationship-related, doesn't matter. You look at how you've coped with challenges in the past and you identify those situations in which the coping has been successful. And when you go through that exercise and you see what has worked for you in the past, then you can capitalize on that experience to say, well, I'm going to try to use that similar strategy to face this new challenge. And obviously when we get support and encouragement from other people around us, that helps our coping efforts as well.
Ross, can you comment if there are differences that exist in the coping styles and strategies between the person with MS and maybe their closest support partner?
Well, I think frequently, opposites attract, as we know, and I think since coping is something that we develop over a lifetime, it's very possible that two people in a family will have very different coping styles. The most familiar one that we hear about all the time is that one person in a couple, for example, wants to read everything about MS, go to all the meetings, do everything MS related, and the other is much more reticent to do that. I'll deal with things as they come along. I don't need to read everything. I don't want to make this a full-time job. Those are two different coping strategies. And I think what's important for family members is to acknowledge and honor each other's coping strategies. It's not that there's right or wrong here. People have different styles, and when you can talk openly about your coping styles and your differences and respect them, you can learn from each other, and you can avoid the conflict that can sometimes come when two people approach challenges in a very different way.
Great. Thanks, Roz. Can you talk about some of the strategies or the results rather, of adaptive coping?
Well, I think coping and resilience, as we've been talking about them, go together and build on each other. So this is just to reiterate that when people cope in this adaptive way that we've been talking about, each time that happens, then that increases their feelings of mastery, their pride in having had a successful outcome. And every time there's that feeling of success, the person feels more resilient when the next challenges come along. So if you think about those building blocks that you saw in the slides before, each time you put one of those new building blocks in place, the foundation feels stronger and you feel more prepared for whatever comes along. So if we look at the next slide, you can think about examples of some very positive coping strategies that I've seen work in MS. And one of those is, when we talk about tools, strategies, resources, all the things that Can Do offers or that the National MS Society offers, or any other tools that you can use, if you can see all of those things as helping you to take charge of your MS and manage your life, rather than giving in to MS, you're setting yourself up for coping in a very positive way. You're patting yourself on the back for doing something that helps you manage a challenge. Same with a philosophy that says, MS is changing things for me, but the important thing is that I want to stay in the game. I want to continue to do the things that are important to me, that matter in my life, even if I have to do them differently. It's being flexible to think about doing things differently that allows you to master those changes and challenges. Identifying your priorities so that you're doing things that are most important to you and saving your valuable energy to focus on those things that are high priorities. Setting goals that are achievable, and we could do a whole webinar just on goal setting, but it really means to pick your goals carefully and set your target on something that you can achieve, even if you have to do it differently than you would have done it before. And like those building blocks, you want to build on your successes so that you're always increasing your feelings of strength and resilience. So as we think about all of these coping strategies, I'm wondering, Mandy, why it is that coping can become so challenging for people affected by MS. What happens to make it so challenging?
Well, MS comes, as all of you know, with a storm of challenges because MS is changing all of the time. People with MS and their families are required to adapt all of the time, perhaps from 1 month to the next, or 1 hour to the next, or even 1 minute to the next. These storms can be very large and interfere with a person's daily life, or they could be small and may be just a simple rearranging of a routine over the course of an hour. But we identified a few major storms that most folks with MS, all folks with MS, are likely enduring. The first storm that we identified is the storm of diagnosis. So a new diagnosis shakes that foundation, shakes that stack of bricks, that analogy that we're using. It shakes your confidence. It shakes the confidence of your family. It's a lot of uncertainty. It forces people to think differently, not only about themselves, but also about their role in their life at home, in their life at work, and in their life in the community. Similarly, exacerbations or MS relapses can shake that same foundation once again. With new or worsening symptoms, that anxiety about the future and that uncertainty can become more profound. And lastly is disease progression. With disease progression, I find that folks are constantly trying to establish a new normal. Perhaps they require more adaptations to old activities. Perhaps they're transitioning to the use of an assistive device, which is designed to continue to help people maintain their activities, but still has an overall influence on their life and their perception of their life. So MS does come with a whole host of challenges that can, again, shake the foundation of any person with MS as well as their family.
So Mandy, it's pretty clear that people can sometimes feel pretty low in the face of all these challenges. People can get down or discouraged. But for most people, after every kind of storm that they might go through, there is a period of calm, or when things get back to baseline. What are the resources that you recommend to help people build or rebuild their resilience when they go through some of these difficult times? How can they take advantage of the calm after the storm to kind of rebuild their resilience?
I'm so glad you asked, Roz, because fortunately rehabilitation is huge and is very critical in helping folks and helping facilitate this rebuilding of your foundation. Rehabilitation can include physical therapy, occupational therapy, as well as speech therapy. It can provide tools, it can provide exercises to help individuals and their families rebuild after these storms. It not only encourages improved mobility and function, though, it does certainly enhance and encourage resilience. If an individual can feel like they're better able to move or better able to do something independently, that can give them a lot of confidence and give them a lot of courage that they can cope and manage this difficult situation.
So you've mentioned the big word exercise, and some people get real excited when we start to talk about exercise, and some people say, oh no, not exercise. So how does exercise fit into building resilience?
Yes, and you're talking to a physical therapist, everyone, so physical therapists get extremely excited about exercise. But exercise is a huge building block for resilience. Exercise helps to achieve physical goals, not only just physical goals, but also emotional and social goals as well. So, for example, if a person has a physical goal of walking better or transferring more independently, then that can have some unintentional emotional and social consequences, such as improved confidence or ability to better engage in the community. However, I do really believe that in order to achieve any physical goals and to improve this resilience, individuals have to have a very specific, highly individualized exercise program in order to be successful. I really think exercise needs to be specific to the challenges facing you. So realistic expectations. Those activities must match the goals that you are working towards. So for example, if an individual wants to increase his or her independence, say with toilet transfers, then spending a lot of time doing arm exercises and bicep curls may not necessarily be the most appropriate. However, maybe some leg strengthening exercises or balance exercises may be perfect. So achieving that goal not only means stronger legs and the ability to get on and off a toilet, but also means improved independence. It may mean that that person can now leave the home without their significant other because he or she no longer has to worry about needing to use the bathroom and the spouse not being present. So again, increased independence for the person with MS relates to increased independence for the spouse or for the support partner as well. And exercise empowerment, again, exercise is unique to everyone and is individualized for everyone. So again, the exercises that are appropriate for one person are not necessarily appropriate for another. So they have to be adapted to the ability levels to encourage and maximize the abilities of that person at that stage, at that part of the storm that they might be facing at any moment in time. So it really becomes critical to have a rehabilitation team that understands how these fluctuations happen and how much and how critical and important it is to have this team approach to managing your overall MS. And the last bullet there is realization of abilities. You know, after a tremendous storm, it's easy to feel like your foundation is rattled, and it's really difficult to want to get up and go to the gym or a rehab facility and see all of these able-bodied people getting around and doing exercises and using equipment that you perhaps are no longer able to use or exercises you're no longer able to do. It kind of is just that reminder that of what you're not able to do. So the situation does nothing to improve your function, number one, but it certainly does not allow you and provide you a good support system to develop the coping skills to adapt and weather the storm. So again, a correctly identified exercise routine that fits your abilities will help you feel successful and will help you endure and weather this storm with greater ease and with greater confidence.
So thanks, Mindy. You know, I think that's a great explanation for us of what exercise can do. And I just want to pick up on one thing you said that's really important, that you're not only increasing your physical function when you do that kind of exercise, but we now have extensive research to confirm that exercise also improves mood. And we know that mood is often challenged in MS and in support partners, by the way. So good aerobic exercise can enhance mood. We also know that exercise improves cognitive function. So anyone who is experiencing some cognitive changes related to MS or is worried about experiencing cognitive changes, knowing that exercise has also been shown to improve that is really important to keep in mind. And when you get out there and you carry out an exercise program and you succeed at achieving some of your goals, of course, that's helping to build your feelings of confidence and resilience. So there's a big emotional component to this as well.
Absolutely, Roz. Thanks for that insight. I do want to say a word about rehabilitation and exercise adherence, which is, in my mind, is also known as rehabilitation resilience. In other words, it's that ability to remain committed to an exercise program when things get, downright tough. So this picture, I hope you can all see it, is a bike with a lot of clothing and purses and shoes. It's nicely arranged on this exercise bike, but clearly this exercise bike is not being used. So I hope none of you have a bike that resembles that in your basement or spare bedroom. However, the key message is sometimes you don't need that fancy equipment. Sometimes you don't need that $50 a month gym membership in order to help you achieve your physical goals. I have clients with very elaborate gyms in their homes, but somehow they still end up in my office asking, how can I improve my adherence to my exercise program? So devices such as bands or even your own body weight can help you truly achieve those functional goals.
So whether you're using elaborate equipment or not, I hear you say loud and clear that it can be hard for even the most devoted individual to adhere to an exercise program. So I'm sure, since you're so passionate about exercise, that you've got some great recommendations for what people can do to try and stick with a program that they've identified for themselves.
Yes, I would like to think I do. Rehabilitation, resilience, a little bit more. Life happens. Life is challenging. Unfortunately, as Roz mentioned, adherence to an exercise program is tough whether you have MS or not. But it's even more challenging with MS because you have fatigue, you have weather, maybe some heat intolerance, sensory changes, things that can really interfere with your ability to be successful with an exercise program. So again, adaptability is very, very critical and very, very, very essential. I would encourage you to think of this adaptability to exercise all the time, because life will happen. And when it does, engage your physical therapist, engage your exercise trainer, engage your family, engage your friends to help you get back on track. Do not feel like you must do it alone, because as you know, and as the picture says, exercise and rehabilitation is medicine for your mind, for your body, for your MS, and it fortunately does have unlimited refills. And I do firmly believe that if you do have an exercise program that encourages function and encourages and is working you towards a goal that you find really satisfying, it becomes increasingly easier to be adherent to a program like that.
I think the other thing that's helpful to remember is that exercise can be fun, that there are many life activities that your physical therapist can help you identify that provide exercise even when you're not thinking that you're doing exercise. So when you're gardening or when you're doing some other hobby out of doors, that's exercise. So the point is to work with your physical therapist to identify something that you enjoy enough that you want to stick with it. If they send you to do 20 laps in a swimming pool and you know from the get-go that you hate swimming more than anything, it's important to speak up and say, that's not going to be a plan that works for me. I need something that I actually enjoy.
Absolutely,
so now that we've talked about exercise as part of rehabilitation that can enhance resilience, what other aspects of rehab can people think about as increasing their resilience?
Well, in addition to exercise, there is another tool, another brick, another block that we use to help enhance resilience, and that is the use of adaptations. So some of the building block adaptations that we often use in rehabilitation include adaptive equipment as well as environmental adaptations. So I'm going to discuss briefly the use of adaptive equipment. So this includes your assistive devices such as your canes and your walkers, as you can see there in the slide. It may also include shower chairs, grab bars, reachers, any type of equipment that kind of helps make your mobility slightly easier. Similarly, braces such as AFOs, which are ankle foot orthoses, which are like generally plastic or carbon fiber types of braces that are worn on the ankle and the lower leg to help address a condition called foot drop. And Bioness and Walk-Aid also address those two issues as well. But there are a number of different types of braces that you can use that can help make your mobility easier and or address some type of an impairment that you're dealing with. Now,
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No. So well, I was just going to ask, I know from my work with people that using tools like this is often seen as a sign of defeat. That if they use a tool or they change something about the way they're living, that they've given in to MS, and how can people turn that around so that they don't see it as a defeat or giving in. Instead, they see it as a success, a way to take charge and manage MS that feels out of control.
That's a great question. It's an ongoing challenge, I think, for a lot of people with MS and their families. I would say, when I try to encourage and make a recommendation for an assistive device, it's not taken lightly. Like, I really have a reason why I encourage that for my patients. Maybe it's a safety reason or a fatigue energy management reason. So we're not just doing it because we want to make that person feel inferior or feel like their disease has defeated them. But you know it's the right piece of adaptive equipment if suddenly your mobility is easier. Suddenly you're able to engage in your world slightly differently than you were without that device. Maybe rather than staying home for your child's football game, you decide to scooter and you're able to go to the game and you're able to enjoy it and you're not fatigued from walking 500 feet. So I think the point comes when people realize that their world is enlarged by using these adaptive tools.
Great.
I would also think that in addition to just your adaptive equipment such as braces and assistive devices, environmental adaptations are huge. And when I say this, I'm more referring to how you can take charge of your environment to set yourself up for more success. So on the first bullet there, I talk about pacing, planning, prioritizing activities. Now, to be quite honest, the occupational therapists are the experts in energy management and pacing and planning and prioritizing. That is their forte. So I would highly encourage any of you and all of you, if fatigue is a tremendous issue, I would encourage a consultation with an occupational therapist in your home. But I'll give you kind of a brief overview of kind of the general concepts. With pacing, it's strategically managing your energy through the day. The concept of energy banking is used quite often. So at the beginning of the day, your energy bank is full. And every time you do an activity, you make a withdrawal from your bank and taking some energy away. And when you rest and give yourself a little break, you make a deposit. And the goal is to keep your bank account or your energy bank balanced. That's somewhat, in a nutshell, the concept of pacing. Now, planning and budgeting your energy is another parallel concept, and it's best actually explained through an example. So, say you want to make a delicious homemade apple pie for a holiday party, but you know it's going to exhaust you. So instead of making that pie all at once, you decide to break up the steps required and maybe even prepare it in the morning so when your energy is better and you're better able to balance and function and complete the task in a timely manner. That's a decent example of planning and budgeting your energy. And lastly, prioritizing. So prioritizing activities is placing activities that are most meaningful in the forefront of your mind and letting kind of the smaller stuff go by the wayside. So don't sweat the small stuff, I think, as the book goes. So, for example, let's stick with the holiday party theme here. You have a holiday party Saturday night. You made this great apple pie. You're really excited to go. And unfortunately, you generally do all of your household chores on Saturdays. But you make the specific decision in your mind to prioritize and forego this cleaning so that you're better able to rest, have energy for this party that you really want to attend. So, and I guess, and Roz, maybe you can agree, but cleaning can always go by the wayside. in order to attend a social event. But again, use those tools of planning, prioritizing, and pacing to help adapt your environment so that you're setting yourself up for the greatest success. That last bullet I'll briefly describe is rehearsal and practice. And this is where your rehab team really can help you plan for those situations that are really uncertain, or that give you a tremendous amount of anxiety. So an example would be, maybe say you want to go to a new restaurant and you are uncertain if this restaurant will accommodate your power wheelchair or your scooter. So what can you do so that you can minimize that anxiety and uncertainty? So perhaps calling ahead to the restaurant, finding out if it's accessible, maybe there's a ramp, or I even encourage patients quite often to use Google Earth, use technology. We have a lot of tools at our disposal when it comes to the internet and technology to get a better sense of the environment that you might be in, rather than automatically dismissing it and saying, I'm unable to go because I use a wheelchair, or I am unable to go because I have to use a walker. And then take that information back to your rehab team and say, okay, hey, I've got to walk on this ramp for 20 feet in order to get into this restaurant Friday night. We need to practice ramps. And then your rehab team can work on that with you and troubleshoot and problem solve so that when you go into that situation, you'll feel confident and you'll feel much more resilient. So we have a quick polling question to see how you guys are, your opinions of use of adaptive equipment. So have any of you used any type of adaptive equipment to enhance your abilities? Yes or no? And we'll give you a few minutes just to kind of respond. I think we have a few still trickling in, but it appears that the vast majority of you do use adaptive equipment to help enhance your abilities. Looks like we have 113 total responses, and about 90 of those responded as yes. Great. So just to comment a little bit more and elaborate slightly further Roz's comment from a couple slides back, how to make the perception of adaptations and uses of these tools less to be perceived as disability and more to be perceived as ability. So again, I have to acknowledge this is a struggle, and these are not recommendations that physical therapists and healthcare providers take lightly. We really do respect the challenges that you guys face when making this transition to an assistive device. Patients and family do think that the disease is winning when we make these recommendations. They don't want to appear weak. They don't want this unwanted attention. I actually have a client right now. She's lovely, but she's a young gal, and she is dating, and she doesn't want to use a cane even though she knows she needs to when she's out and about socially, because she's afraid that young men won't approach her. And similarly, I have another client who is a CEO, and he uses a scooter outside of work, but when he's in the workplace, he prefers not to use his scooter because of the perception that he feels like he may have to his peers or to his staff. So that appearance of weakness or that perception that the disease is winning is prevalent, unfortunately. However, and I do acknowledge, again, that all of these instances and these reactions to these recommendations are challenging, and they certainly can make anyone feel disabled, if you will, or feel less than adequate. However, I would really encourage people to start viewing them as tools that help you take charge of those challenges, that help you re-engage in your family and your world. And if an adaptation that we recommend, like a scooter or a cane or a walker, helps you do more and enjoy more in your life much more easily, then it's absolutely the appropriate device for you to use. Now, if it doesn't, then, by all means, I agree that maybe it's not the most appropriate device. But the whole goal of adaptations are to improve your independence and to allow you to do more, see more, engage more in your life. It's the goal is to aid ability and discourage disability.
And so let me just tie this back to what we talked about in terms of adaptive coping, that when you cope adaptively, you see a problem as a situation that needs to be solved. So you look for a problem-solving strategy that allows you to have the most successful outcome. So using one of these tools allows you to take a situation that's been a challenge and turn it into an opportunity to be more engaged, to participate, to succeed at that opportunity, which in turn allows you to be perceived by others as having succeeded at that challenge. All of that contributes to building resilience and strengthening that foundation that we talked about. So Mandy, could you just briefly show and explain a few of the specific tools that you might recommend to somebody for use in their everyday life? I know there are a million of them, but
I chose a few here to kind of cover the spectrum for folks. And some of these, forgive me if some of these are familiar to you guys, but the first picture in this upper, and I'll try to use a mark here, in this upper corner is a tub bench, and it allows you to sit down on the outside of the tub and bring your legs in, either with your arms or independently, and kind of shimmy your bottom into the tub. I think the implication of a tub bench for folks is that it increases your independence and your privacy with bathing. I think that's a very tremendous and important issue for people to be able to still value their privacy in situations like that. This picture over here are some weighted utensils with a larger grip. That type of utensil helps to minimize a tremor if a tremor exists, and it hopefully, as far as functional application, may allow a person to go out to eat with their family. I have a strong eating theme through my examples, forgive me, but may encourage folks to go out with their families and eat without the concern that they may be unable to feed themselves. So it may give them that independence in the home and in the community with eating. And then this last example here are some stairs. I don't know if you can see those yellow strips of tape on the edges of the stairs, but those are some non-skid tape. I don't think that's the technical term for them, but that's what I call them. That's what we call them in Nebraska. But the intent of them is to help with fall risk reduction, but it also may have a secondary effect or a secondary value that may help someone with visual issues, say, for example, like depth perception, to better see where one stair ends and the next begins, which, again, overall means improved confidence, improved ambulation in the home or even in the community. And then the next slide, I just spoke briefly about some relatively fundamental examples of adaptations, and then here are some slightly more advanced, more types of leisure activities, examples of leisure activity adaptations. So this first picture up here in the corner is, well, many of you hopefully know who that is, but that's a picture of Jimmy Huga, the founder of Can Do Multiple Sclerosis. He was a professional downhill skier and an Olympic medalist. And as his disease progressed, he clearly continued to have a strong passion and a love for downhill skiing. So he was able to use adaptive skiing so that he could still enjoy the slopes, which is great. Jimmy Huga is a wonderful example of adapting to the changes of the disease of MS. this gentleman over here in, well, please ignore the very outdated wheelchair and wardrobe and rather take a peek at the pole, kind of a long pole with the legs that he is using to help with bowling. So to make a few assumptions, this gentleman has issues with ambulation, potentially balance, maybe grip or arm strength that prevents him from bowling the traditional way. So he's still able to partake in bowling, but uses this tool to help make it happen. And lastly, this gal down here in the bottom is happily riding her bike. This is a lightweight recumbent 3-wheeled bike that she is able to propel with her arms. Very easy to get in and out of for most folks with a little bit of assistance, but again, it provides an option to continue bicycling when the traditional route is no longer appropriate. I don't unfortunately have a picture of this one, but I did want to mention one other type of a bicycle. It's called an e-bike or an electric bike. And what it does is it looks like a traditional bike, but it allows you to pedal as long as you wish normally. And then if fatigue sets in or you aren't feeling as well, you can press a button which switches the propulsion to an electric motor. And it allows you to continue to bicycle in the traditional way and even go those longer distances if you like, with an alternative option of propulsion being that electric motor. Roz, do you mind commenting briefly how these types of adaptations might have an influence on the overall family, both the more leisure adaptations and then the adaptations that are more fundamental to life?
Sure, Mandy. I think as I listen to you talk about them, I think about how these adaptations are really to everyone's benefit. When adaptations like these are used, it enhances together time for the family. Activities that you might have given up doing. We can't go for walks together. We can't do any of these sports together. We don't go out to restaurants. I see people's life spaces kind of shrinking as they gradually give up activities that are important to them. But using these adaptations allows you to keep your life space as full and active as you want it to be, to share time together. Sometimes it's that you continue doing your favorite activities, you just do them differently. Sometimes it's discovering whole new activities that you didn't even know you would enjoy, but by using these tools and strategies you get to do them. Most importantly, I think when you use these tools well and you work with the rehab team to look at your goals, look at your energy level, figure out tools and strategies, you're saving energy, which is your most valuable commodity, and that means that then you have more energy to do more things together. So I think every member of the family really values these adaptations and benefits when they're used fully. So I'm a believer.
Great. So thanks for your comments, Roz. Now that you all have seen some examples, would you consider using more adaptive tools since we had so many willing participants the first question? So we'll give you a few seconds or a minute to respond to this. And Roz, as people are responding, I really appreciate that analogy of the shrinking. I think that's really valuable. That's another way for individuals, for everyone to be able to tell if you have the right adaptive equipment, if suddenly your world doesn't feel as small as it did prior to using that device.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have a few more believers. So thank you all for your response. Just a few folks who we haven't quite convinced that they may still be helpful. But we'll keep working on you. Okay. I'm going to move us to the next slide. in conclusion, rehabilitation and resilience work quite well together, and rehabilitation can help foster and grow and nurture one's resilience. And just to reiterate, exercise and adaptations are for all ability levels and can hopefully help people realize what they are able to do and what they can do.
And so I just want to reemphasize something that Mandy just said. For all ability levels, the rehab team is really one of your greatest allies, whether you've just been diagnosed with MS or you've been living with it for a while. There's always room to learn about how to manage your energy if fatigue is a problem, and how to make the most of whatever tools and strategies are available to you, even if it's just the tools and strategies that are available in your local Office Max. Any tool that we use to make life at home or work easier is an adaptive device, and we can all use those to conserve energy and make life easier. So to pull all these themes together, the rehab team can help you maximize your abilities, whatever your ability levels are. And as you do that, as you use an exercise program or you try out different tools or strategies, you are gradually building confidence in your ability to do things. And by the way, you're building the confidence that your family members and friends have in your ability to do things. They don't have to be worried all the time, are you going to fall, are you going to hurt yourself, are you going to be able to keep up? They see you mastering these strategies and their confidence grows. That leads to increased independence, feelings of confidence in yourself, in an ability to do things that you want to do when you want to do them. And that helps you to achieve greater feelings of resilience, which means that if more challenges come along, whether they're MS related or other life challenges, you feel more prepared and able to take on those challenges. So it all flows together. So if you keep in mind our building blocks that we've been talking about through this whole program, it's an image we'd like you to keep in mind to remind you that you can build resilience, achieve a feeling of resilience as you use the strategies and tools that we've talked about. And now there's something that we'd like you to just think about. You can do this individually or you can do this with your support partner. But everybody starts with sort of a partial pile of blocks. Might be a little messy for some of you, or for some it might feel like you've got the beginnings of some really good building blocks. But think about what blocks you already have in place. What strategies, what coping tools do you have to help you weather whatever storms might come along in your life that give you resilience? And what are some blocks that you would like to add, that you would like to work on with your rehab team or other members of your healthcare team to help you build that foundation so that you feel better able to take it on? And it's just a little exercise we would like you to take home and think about for yourself. And now I think we thank you for listening, and we're hoping that you have some questions for us.
Absolutely, and thank you, Mandy and Roz, for that awesome conversation on all of these coping and adaptation tools. We did get several questions in, and the first question that I'd like to ask is, this gentleman, he has MS, and his wife supports him doing yoga twice a week. But he's noticed, and she also sees, that he gets more and more tired after each yoga practice. So their question is the yoga really helping me, or is it breaking down my abilities?
Roz, if you're okay, I'll take this question.
Absolutely. That one's yours.
I would approach it with actually a few other questions. Is the duration of the yoga class too long? Does he need a break, or maybe participate in a shorter class? the other question that I would have is perhaps the poses and the exercises and activities that they're doing in the yoga class, are they too challenging that it's causing what I like to call exercise hangover? So I think I think a good rule of thumb is if it takes you more than an hour or two after exercise to recover, then you probably did too much. If you feel like recovery is within an hour or two, then you're probably right on. But I would take those two thoughts, and then I would also recommend maybe some pre-cooling, so using some cooling devices before participating in yoga, maybe even during participating in yoga, and then certainly after as well.
Great, thank you, Mandy. I know I certainly get exercise hangover every time I exercise as well. And so Roz, the next question, I think this would be a great question for you. My spouse has MS and is very resistant to any type of coping strategies, and it's very difficult to watch my spouse continue to deteriorate mentally and physically. What can I do to protect my own and my children's well-being?
It's a good question and a challenging question. You know, I think frequently support partners are in a situation where they want very much to encourage or get the person they care about to cope differently or behave differently. And they can't always do that. And sometimes what the support partner has to do is go and get whatever help she or he needs for himself or herself and for the kids. So perhaps it might be some counseling or just talking to somebody about how it feels, and because that's a feeling of loss of control. You're watching somebody who's having a great deal of difficulty and isn't taking the steps you want them to take to get to a better place. And so therefore you have to deal with your own feelings of loss and grief and frustration in order to be able to manage it. And so talking about that frequently with a counselor and maybe bringing the kids in to talk about what strategies to use is the most important first step.
Great, thanks Roz. And we've received a few questions regarding a rehabilitation team. So some of the questions that we've gotten in is, what exactly is a rehab team and how do I go about finding or getting one?
I think Roz and I can both answer this one, but I'll go ahead and start with a response. I would contact your local chapter of the National MS Society to get connected with a physical therapist, an occupational therapist, some type of rehabilitation professional who specializes in the management of MS. Another good resource would be absolutely having a conversation with your neurologist or your nurse practitioner or your physician assistant who provides most of your MS care, and have them guide you to some resources and some individuals who have that interest.
And the only thing I would add to that is, you know, you can call the National MS Society. It's 1-800-FIGHT-MS, and you will be connected to an MS navigator. And the MS navigators have lists of healthcare professionals in your area. So you just tell them what kind you're looking for and they can refer you. But again, the members of the rehab team most often are the physical therapist, occupational therapist, speech language pathologist, and we have lists of all of those to help you get connected with the person you need.
Great, thanks Roz and Mandy. Another question that we have here, are there any adaptive tools or equipment for cognitive problems, for example, being overwhelmed by information or even forgetfulness?
So I'm going to take that one. I think in our everyday lives we all use strategies to help our cognition. So with or without MS, we use date books, we use calendars, we use computers. Those are all kinds of adaptive equipment to help us do things more easily. When MS is a challenge and problems with memory and prioritizing and organization come into play, that's when you need to look at ways to substitute organization for memory. Instead of relying on a memory, for example, that may not be working as well as it did, you look at every possible way to simplify your environment so that you don't have to remember as much. So I'm a big believer in family calendars posted in the kitchen where everybody in the family can see them, and everybody in the family has a responsibility to put their important things up there so that the person with MS knows who's doing what when and doesn't have to be reminded all the time. You have one place where you keep the important things, and those things always go back to the one place. So your keys, your glasses, anything else that you're spending a lot of time looking for, they should always have one place where you know they're going to be. And everybody in the family has to help by making sure that the mail all goes in one place. House keys go in another place. Coats go in another place. Whatever it is, so that we're not hunting all the time. So that kind of organization can be used to help people who are struggling with memory, concentration, and organization.
Excellent. We have just a few more questions that I think we might have time to answer. Roz, again, this one is, it looks like it's for you. She says, I've had MS for 10 years. She's doing physically well, still working, etc. Her MS is harder on her mentally than emotionally. She's on antidepressants, and she's also seeing a psychiatrist. Cognitively, she understands how important it is to be positive, but on the inside, she feels defeated. Any tips for acceptance of this chronic disease? I know that's a very broad question, but I think it's one
it's a broad question. You know, I think for me, I think it's important that people acknowledge that there is a grieving process that goes on when life is changed or abilities are changed out of your control, and that's a healthy process that has to happen. And in my work with people, a large part of what I did was to help them deal with feelings of grief over loss and change so that they could get through the grief to the other side and begin that kind of positive problem solving that we've been talking about tonight. But sometimes that sadness and the feeling of loss is so great that until it's worked through, it's very hard to start the positive growth piece. So I really encourage people to get a counselor. You can do that through the National MS Society. You can talk to a peer. You can go to a professional counselor. But it's really processing those feelings of loss so that you can begin to take the next steps that build your more positive feelings of adaptation and resilience.
Great, thanks. And then one final question, Mandy, I think this one can go to you. Does doing only 5 minutes of exercise prove to be helpful, or is it a waste of my already limited energy, or should I push to do longer exercises?
Well, that's a highly individualized question, considering I don't know this person's ability levels. However, I would respond to saying yes, 5 minutes is wonderful. I'm glad you're doing 5 minutes. That's better than no minutes at all. So absolutely, it's worthwhile. I again would encourage you to consult with a physical therapist and see if there's a way that we could strategize a little bit differently. Maybe you do 5 minutes in the morning, another 5 minutes in the afternoon, and then gradually increase that, or maybe changing the type of exercise that you're doing would allow you to do slightly more and overall build and enhance your endurance. So I think tweaking those parameters a little bit you could find really empowering, and realize that you would certainly be capable of doing more.
Great, thanks, Mandy. We've had a lot of questions come in, and I thank you everyone for your feedback and for your questions, but I think we do need to kind of end now. But if you weren't able to get your questions answered, we do have some resources that you can use to either search for your answers to your questions, or you can submit them on our website. We have a forum called our Ask the Can Do team. It's a question and answer form where if you submit your questions, we'll forward it to the appropriate programs consultant on our staff, and we'll try to get those questions answered to you as soon as possible. We also have our Can-Do library that's full of articles written by program consultants on all sorts of different topics, and you can also search through there to find any tidbits or tools of information that might be helpful for you and your support partner. So all of these resources you can find on our website at www.mscando.org. And again, you will receive these slides in a PDF format, so any information that you think you might have missed, you can browse through, and you can also view our recorded webinar in our archives tomorrow. And I did just want to let everyone know that Can-Do MS, we're based here in Colorado, and today is Colorado Gives Day. This is a fundraiser that Colorado does every year. And today people will be coming together to raise millions of dollars for nonprofits such as ours that are here in Colorado. Last year we raised $15.7 million as a whole for all that was distributed to all Colorado nonprofits. And 100% of your donation comes to us. So if you'd like, we would be so appreciative for you to go to our website at mscando.org/COGives to give today, and your contribution will be increased by the First Bank Incentive Fund. And we will have our January webinar on January 14th. From 8 to 9:15 p.m. Eastern Time. The topic is very timely. It's New Year and New Changes, Tips on Daily Living with MS. Our presenters are dietitian Denise Nowak and Ann Mullenix, who is an occupational therapist. So please visit our website again and join us again next month at no charge to you. And again, thanks to everyone who participated tonight. A special thank you to you, Roz and Mandy, for all of those helpful tools and information that you provided tonight. Just a reminder that as we click off and end, a survey will pop up and appear on your screen. So we'd love it if you could just take a moment to complete that survey and share your input. Your feedback always helps us to improve on our webinars. And so we thank you for your participation tonight, and we hope to see you again here soon on our webinars. Thanks, and have a great night, everyone.